Someone there?
Do you think spirits are real? Do we have a soul that lives on after we die? I wish I knew the answer to that question. But the prophets, the sages, the gurus from thousands of years ago, they knew. And that was one reason they nested secrets in spiritual verses the way that they did. Knowing what they believed is key for us to recover their nested teaching and to heal our own soul. And that's key number 2. I'm going to tell you about that in this video. Interested? Well, let's get started. Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. Welcome to Just One Truth. In this video series, I have contended that every myth, religious teaching, and religion in the world nest the same teaching, and that I have the keys to show you how to unlock that. In video number 1, we covered the first key and how all of the teachings are layered and how to navigate through those layers. If you haven't watched video 1, I'm going to recommend that you do that. One of the things we need to know as far as how to heal the soul is to understand what did the ancients think the soul was. Today we have an incredible variety of ideas about what the soul is. In fact, there are people who believe that all of our consciousness, our emotions, our feelings, everything about us arises from the electrochemical processes in our brain. As we exist, that there is no soul, that's all there is to it. There are people on the opposite end who believe that all of those same qualities, our self-awareness, our emotions, our love, our hurt, everything exists in a soul, and that the body is just a shell, and that when you die, every bit about you continues on except for your body. Those are quite opposite extremes, where one of them says everything is in the physical and the other one says everything is in the spiritual. And in between those two extremes, there are all manner of thinking, reincarnation or variations. I, of course, have my own beliefs and my own feelings, but I'm not here to address that. That's not what this video is about. The video is about how to unnest the secret teachings, the teachings that say everything from Christianity to Islam to Greek and Roman mythology to the teachings of the Buddha to Hinduism all contain the same personal teaching inside of a shell that the masses will carry. We're going to get to that nugget. It's not for everyone. If you're a seeker, you've already decided that there's something out there, but it's not contained in one of these religions. So in this video, we're going to get to key number 2. What is the soul? Key number 1 in the first video was make the verse about yourself. And of course, how to navigate the layers. It's not easy to see what is there. It has to be read in a certain way. There's certain rules that you look at it with to unpack it. And when you do that, and you use those same rules for every one of those religions, myths, and spiritual teachings, you will find the same thing. I don't tell you what's there. I don't tell you what to think. I simply show you what I found and let you look for yourself. This isn't religion class. This is seeking and knocking class. This is looking for the answer and finding something on your own. The only fair way to do this is to start with the brain, who and what we are, what we know individually. So think about this for a moment. Think about when you were 1 month old? What do you remember? What about when you were 6 months old or a year old, 18 months, 2 years? You know you had life. You know you did things. What do you remember? When the human is born, we've got some brain wiring. Your personality traits, a few other characteristics are going to be hardwired in. Your survival instincts are wired in, breathing, eating, but we can't even see yet. The brain is said to be neuroplastic. It's malleable. It grows. Neural pathways grow as we learn. We know this. We can see this. Remember learning to drive. When you started out, you had no idea. But as you continued to practice, as you continued to get good at it, as you continued to do it more and more, pretty soon you could do it without even thinking about it. That's because your brain wires, neural pathways establish, and pretty soon you're good at something that you weren't good at before by just simply practicing it. Humans, when we're born, don't have those connections made. Those connections are made as we experience life. Most people don't remember details of their life before the age of 4 or 5. Yeah, there's people that say they remember a lot of things, and perhaps they do, but by and large, most all humans really don't have conscious memories of that time in our life. I'm going to stray from that just a little bit and ask you to imagine something with me. In this story, I'm going to make this story up. In this story, let's say we have triplets, and they're born in Australia to an Aboriginal healer. 3 boys, born to a shaman and his wife. And when they're a week old, a disaster happens and the mother and father are killed, and the boys have to be adopted out. One of the boys gets adopted to a family in Saudi Arabia. Another boy gets adopted by a family in India. And another boy gets adopted by a family in the United States. And in each one of those families that these boys are adopted into, they're very devout in their religious beliefs. The Indians are Hindu. The Saudi Arabians are Muslim. The Americans are Christian. These boys from an early age are brought to their synagogues, churches, temples, and they're taught. They're taught the ways of their religious belief. And they grow with that, and they become devout in their beliefs. They all share a conviction of that belief. Their brains, their malleable brains, are being wired. Why didn't they become shamans? They were born to a shaman. Take these kids at the age of 30 or 40 years old and bring them together. They fight and argue. They may even go to war over their religious beliefs. What's the difference? Who's right and why? We're all born someplace and we're raised some way, and almost without exclusion, we become products of that environment and that belief system. And we live convinced that that's the only thing that's right when we don't even know the other systems. We don't know the other beliefs. We don't know the other religions. And if we had been born there instead, we would have different beliefs. Do we think about that? What makes that happen? We know that that's the brain. We know that that's conditioning. That's not a spiritual teaching. That's an indoctrination. That's a conditioning. That's a wiring. That's a programming. Take another fun story. We'll go back to driving. Most everybody knows how, so let's just use that. Say you're taking a road trip, a weekend trip with your buddies. You're all experienced drivers, and you're driving a long way. Maybe you're driving cross country. You make that whole drive. You're talking about your experiences, your life, your plans, your goals, your dreams, all of those different things. At the end of the trip, you get to where you're going and you realize, I don't remember the drive. Maybe you stopped and saw some significant things along the way, but by and large, you think, I don't remember the drive. I remember goofing around. I remember laughing. But along the way, you avoided obstacles. You changed lanes to avoid cars and to make passes. You stopped for fuel. You took all the right exits. You did all of the things necessary. You set cruise control and you steered and stayed in the lane. What was that? We know today that that's because of our brain, because of the subconscious mind, because you're so trained and you're so conditioned that you can do that without thinking about it. You're on autopilot, basically. You're doing things without having to think about it. And in your everyday life, as you're going about your business, the things that you're doing around the house, around the office, around work, around whatever environment you exist within, you can function without having to think, I have to do this. How do I do this? No, at some point you know how to do it and you do it without thinking about it. You're on autopilot. 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, nobody even knew we had a brain. Nobody knew anything about the mind. Nobody knew that we had a conscious and a subconscious. However, you can take a little shepherd boy who's got his goats and he's herding them to Damascus. He's thinking about the girl he saw at the well that day, and he's preoccupied. He's thinking about other things in life, but he knows along the way that he's taken care of his goats. He's kept them all together. He's avoided the camel train on the trail, whatever. And he didn't have to think about it. He's done it enough to know that he can do it automatically. He's aware of that. He's got the brain capacity that we do. Take an old fisherman who's out there catching his fish for the day. He's thinking about his house, which is falling apart in shambles. His wife and he are getting old, but they need to fix it. Winter's coming. They're going to be uncomfortable. He's thinking about the help that he needs. But at the end of the day, he's caught his fish. He's gone to market. He's helped take care of himself and his wife. And he didn't have to stop and think, how do I throw my net? How do I catch the fish? He's so good at it that he did that on autopilot. Again, they had the same brain capacity that we have today. They were not unintelligent people. They didn't have technology that we have, so they were not aware of that. But if they had the technology, they would have been just like us. The difference is they had a lot of time on their hands to think about stuff. We kind of don't have that today. We take that away from ourselves through our media. What would you think if you lived back then and someone told you that's your soul, that's your spirit, that's the part of you that is functioning and taking care of you while you're thinking about something else? While your carnal mind is one place, your spirit is in charge, taking care of things. My contention is that they thought that was the spirit. We could call it the subconscious mind, and I'm not saying that the soul and the spirit of a human being is the subconscious mind. I'm not at all. What I'm saying is that when they taught back then, and they talked about healing the soul, about healing the spirit, how do you do that? What is the soul? What is the spirit? Some people say there isn't one at all. What can they heal? Nothing. Other people say your soul and your spirit is this energy thing that goes on beyond you, and it retains everything that you have. How do you heal that? You can't. You can find comfort in turning yourself over to something bigger than you, a higher power, a God, or an energy, or some kind of an existence beyond yourself. How do you take a process like healing your soul, something that was taught thousands of years ago, and apply it today? It works if we call the subconscious mind the soul. That's key number 2. So key number 1, you make the verse about yourself. Key number 2, you make the verse about your subconscious mind. Where are you hurt? How is your soul hurt? How is your spirit hurt? You're hurt by being beaten, abused, molested, enslaved. You've been programmed to be a certain way. You were born with an empty brain, and you were fed certain information, beliefs, and conduct until that affected you. That is what you must heal. If you think about it as an energy being, you can't heal that. If, however, you think about it as your subconscious mind, your experiences, your emotions, we can work with that. That having been said, I find it necessary to take a short detour. Who am I? Why should you believe me? Why should you take what I have to say? Don't. Don't. I wouldn't. My life has been defined by questioning everything somebody told me. When somebody said, here is the truth, and it's because it is written, or because it is God's word, or because of something that you're supposed to just take it on faith, something in me always said, how do I know that? Just because you tell me. I didn't always believe people. And I'm not talking about the doctors, the lawyers, the professional things in the community. I'm talking about spiritual lessons, spiritual growth. Somehow, in my younger days, I was given an opportunity to leave religion. However, I knew that there was something that was there. I believed something was beyond us. And after studying through my lifetime many different belief systems, religions, spiritual teachings, mythologies, I realized a lot of people put an incredible amount of validity to what they were raised with. And I thought, well, they all believe that they're right, but there's something at the core that makes them all right. What is that? You know, at some point along the way, I realized that there's a universe and there's a human mind involved. There's a belief system and there's a certain way that that mind works, with faith, with conviction, that makes things happen. They might say it's God, Jesus, the cosmos, astral alignments, the Easter Bunny. It doesn't matter. It didn't matter what they believed caused it. What seemed evident to me was that something worked for them. And instead of discounting all of them and saying you're all wrong, I somehow looked at them and said, boy, there's something about each one of them. And what that led me to see is that there are commonalities between them. And it's the way the mind works. It wasn't something external, it was something internal, even though people most often didn't see that. People still credit it with something external when actually it's from within themselves. But that's only a little bit of what I learned and what I discovered by being open-minded and trying to absorb everything that I possibly could and wonder about things. But at the same time, along the way, when you run into those people that say, oh, this is the answer, you don't need to look anywhere else, that's the fastest way to drive someone like me away. They're not looking. They're not seeking. They're not even open-minded to other ideologies. They hadn't settled on anything that I wanted. And if you're watching this, I suspect you're that way too. You wouldn't listen to me, and I wouldn't want you to. Boy, that's about as wrong a thinking as I can imagine. You don't tell people what to think. You give them the tools to think for themselves. What I know didn't come from seminary school or college. And I'm not going to use that term school of hard knocks. I really don't like that. That's kind of synonymous with I haven't been anywhere or done anything. I just know that what life is about. This is much bigger than all of that. This is something different. This is something you learn through study, through contemplation, through meditation, through being an extreme introvert that has spent thousands of hours alone, out camping, out in the mountains, out doing things that just take you away from people and society and media, where you've got the time to think. You've got time like the people 3,000 and 4,000 years ago had. But the reason it's important for you to know my story and to know where I come from, it's because I want to connect myself with the teaching. There are people who are going to not be able to relate to what I say, and there's other people that are going to relate to it very much so. My life changed from one place to another because of this teaching, because of what I know. And that's what I'm here to talk about. So I want to tell you how my life started out. And then a little bit about me along the way. Not all in one sitting. I think that would be boring. But you know what? It's hot and stuffy in here. Let's take a walk in the desert. I like that. We'll talk out there. Welcome to the Hoodoos. It's one of my favorite places. It's secret. I come out here and camp for days. You can find isolation away from media, news, the world. You got time to think. Your own thoughts, not somebody else's. Anyway, okay. So again, I think it's important for me to tell you where I come from, to attach myself to the story so that you can see the path I took. I'm not going to tell you what to do or what path you should take. That never worked for me. I'm going to show you the path I took. Everybody gets to make up their own mind. This is just a short piece, beginning of my life. My mom was 17 years old when she got married, and she had 2 boys. The first was Larry. That's him on the right and me on the left. Well, the man she married was Lawrence Howe, and I just call him Lawrence. Even though he was my biological father, I have no recollection of him. As soon as she got married, she found out he was a drunk and he wouldn't hold down a job. She got a job waitressing to take care of me and Larry, but he would come home and take the money from her tip money. And she said he would disappear for 3-4 days on end and then come back home and do the same thing. And she tried to withhold it, so he just beat the hell out of her. And she gave him the money, but she decided quickly, I can't feed my kids this way. So she tried to withhold it. And what he did, he was a smoker. And what he did is he started burning me and Larry on the arms and legs with lit cigarettes. And she said he would cut us with knives, cut the, not stab us, but just like drag the knife across your skin and leave little surface scratches and sometimes just enough to draw blood. But it freaked her out, and she started giving him the money again to try and protect us. But he used it as a control tactic. She started keeping a little stash off to the side and giving him money as soon as he came back, thinking that would appease him. But he quickly realized, no, she's holding some back, and he kept doing that. He was abusing her and abusing me and Larry that way. And one day her youngest brother, my uncle, came over to visit, and Lawrence had just been there, and Larry and I were screaming and crying, and we had fresh cigarette butt burns on us, and Mom was freaking out and didn't know what to do. And he just said, pack your bags, load the suitcases, I'm taking you out of here. And that's all she would tell me about that story. She never said what happened afterwards, whether they even got divorced. She ran away. She got away from there and took me and Larry with her. Then she got a job at United Airlines, cleaning the airplanes in between flights. And while she was there, she met a young mechanic who had just gotten out of the Air Force, who had served over in Japan during Korea. And they fell in love and got married. Anyway, John adopted me and Larry and made us Paulsons. So that ended that chapter. Anyway, that's all of that for now. I'll tell you more later. That wasn't the bad part. Let's head on back. Well, that was fun, huh? A little short. We'll make some more trips out there in the future. I love spending time out there. 40 days, 40 years, especially when you know what 40 actually means. If you think it means 40 days or 40 years, that's layer 2. In this video, we've taken a short look at human development and what the ancients thought the soul was. Basically, how we are born pretty much empty, and that we become products of our environment regardless of what that environment is. Well, let's take this opportunity to summarize what we've covered in the last 2 episodes. First of all, that the teachings exist in 2 to 3 layers, and that the outer layer is literal. The second layer is generally the religious or the mythological layer, and that the deepest nested layer, the one that people rarely have access to, is layer 3. That's the one at the very core, and that's the one we're going after here. We learned that spiritual verses are about you. You read it as if it's about yourself. It's about what's up here, not what's out there in the world. And yes, very specifically, we've learned that in order to do this, we have to read the verse as if it's about our subconscious mind and what the ancients would have thought was the spirit or the soul. That part of us that was in charge when you weren't paying attention. The part that we know today is the subconscious mind. And if we do that, we can use the verse to make changes in our life. In the next episode, I'm going to begin tying our personal self to the verse, to the metaphor, to see who and what we are and how we fit. What does it mean to feed yourself? What does it mean to fast? What does it mean to put new wine into new bottles versus old bottles? And all manner of cryptic verbiage. We're going to take a look at that and see more directly how we fit with the verse, how it becomes personal. I'm also going to continue to tell you a bit about me. I was abused and I was hurt, and I had to find answers or else I wouldn't be here today. And I want to share that with you because there's a lot of you in the same place. A lot of you have had a similar kind of a life. I want you to feel like there's a comfortable path. Till then, please feel free to leave me some comments below. I always enjoy conversations with people who are really truly seekers. People who seek and knock. And I don't mean seek and knock within the confines of their pre-existing belief. I mean people who seek and knock and let that belief go and open up to everything in the world, all possibility. There's a big difference there. Well, so we find ourselves at the end of this video. If you like the content, please subscribe and like. YouTube won't recommend it and pass it around unless there's been a significant activity. In the meantime, the question still remains. Do we have a soul that lives on after we die? I still don't know the answer to that question. Be safe. Look inward. And until next time, happy Halloween.